Have you ever signed your freedom away with a pen that didn't even shake? They say when your life changes forever, there's a sound, a crash, a shout, a heartbeat that skips. Mine changed in silence, the kind of silence that settles in a law firm conference room at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I stared at the glossy black pen lying perfectly centered on a white contract. Marriage agreement. Terms. Binding for 3 years. No exit without mutual consent. Assets. Separate. Affection. Optional. Love. Not required. Across from me sat the man I was about to marry. Alexander Drake. Media mogul. New York's most ruthless bachelor. A face made for magazine covers. A soul rumored to be absent. He hadn't said more than 10 words to me since we first met. This wasn't courtship. It was acquisition. And I wasn't the bride. I was the debt. My fingers hovered over the paper, but I didn't hesitate. My father's hospital bills sat in my bag. $28,000 in late-stage heart care and counting. And no one else to pay. So I signed. Click, done. Alexander took the pen, signed his name in 2 swift strokes, and closed the file without looking at me. His voice, deep and clean like cold bourbon, broke the air. You belong to me starting tonight, but don't ask me to love you. He stood. I didn't. Not at first. I watched the space he left behind, wondering if it had always been this empty. Charleston smelled like jasmine and river silt that afternoon. I stepped outside the law office and pulled my coat tighter, though it wasn't the wind that chilled me. Somewhere down the street, I could hear children laughing. The sound made my throat close. He had given me until 8 p.m. to pack. The driver would pick me up. He would fly me to New York. And by morning, I would be Mrs. Emma Drake, the legally bound, emotionally discarded wife of a man with ice in his veins and fire in his eyes. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't built for crying. Packing took 15 minutes. I left behind most of what I owned. What did a coffee shop girl need in a Manhattan penthouse? My last glance at the cafe was brief. Chapter and Steam had been my whole world. Books, espresso, silence, and safety. I'd traded it all for 3 years in a marriage made of signatures and silence. When the black SUV pulled up, I didn't expect Alexander to be inside. He was, and he didn't look pleased. Emma, he said with that voice, smooth, exact, uncaring. I slid into the leather seat beside him and buckled my belt. The air inside smelled of cedarwood and control. You didn't pack much, he said. I didn't come for a vacation. That made him glance at me. His eyes were sharper up close, gray, stormy, laced with warning. I don't like games, he said. Good, I replied. I'm terrible at them. We didn't speak again until the city swallowed us whole. The penthouse was carved from glass and steel. It overlooked the East River, stretching like a kingdom too clean to be real. Inside, the floors gleamed like ice. The walls were a perfect shade of money. Everything smelled like wealth and whiskey, sharp, polished, impersonal. This is your room, he said, pushing open a door to a space larger than my entire apartment. Cream-colored sheets, silk curtains, a fireplace that lit with a switch. He didn't enter. You're not required to share a bed with me, he said flatly. Unless you choose to. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. Not from a man who just said I belonged to him. But, he added, stepping close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath, don't mistake kindness for weakness. This marriage may be a contract, but I do not tolerate rebellion. I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye. Then don't mistake my silence for obedience. His jaw twitched. We stood there, 2 strangers bound by paper, pride, and something darker neither of us wanted to name. Later that night, I sat by the window and stared out over the river, the city lights flickering like stars that forgot how to shine. I wasn't afraid. I was something worse. Numb. This was the part no one warned you about. Not the leaving, not the losing, but the not feeling. The way survival tasted like ash and victory sounded like someone else's laugh. Didn't knock when he came in. He didn't touch me. He only said, "We have dinner at 8 tomorrow. You'll wear red." And then he left. No good night. No smile. Just that unbending, unreadable voice. But in that moment, something inside me stopped retreating. I wasn't a pawn. I was a woman with a soul, a spine, and a storm gathering in her chest. He may have owned the night, but by morning, I'd make damn sure he remembered who Emma Reyes really was. What's worse, being touched without love, or being untouched like you're nothing at all. The silence in the penthouse had changed. Before, it was clinical, polished, corporate. Now it was personal. Too personal. I stood barefoot on the marble floor of the guest bedroom. Correction, my bedroom now. My suitcase sat untouched in the corner. The fireplace glowed with artificial warmth, casting shadows across the cream silk duvet like someone else's life had been pressed into this room before me. I didn't belong here. But then again, maybe I didn't belong anywhere anymore. Outside, the floor-to-ceiling windows New York pulsed. Yellow cabs zipped through the night. Somewhere below, people were laughing, dancing, falling in and out of love. And up here, in a palace built of glass and silence, I was someone's wife, a wife with no vows, no first dance, no last name spoken with care, just a title and a contract. At precisely 10 p.m., the lock clicked behind me, my stomach tensed. Alexander walked in, jacket gone, tie loosened. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms, exposing strong, sculpted lines and veins like marble beneath skin. He looked like the kind of man who conquered boardrooms and bodies alike. But tonight, he looked unreadable. He didn't say anything. At first, just stood there, scanning me like an object he already owned but couldn't figure out how to use. "You're still dressed," he said. I glanced down at my simple gray dress. Not red, not silk, not seductive. "Should I be naked?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. His jaw tensed. "I told you. You won't be touched unless you ask for it." "Then why are you here?" "To remind you," he said slowly, stepping forward, "that what you signed wasn't just a business deal. You are in my life now, and I expect you to act like it." I didn't realize silence was a role. That made him pause. For the first time, something flickered behind those cold gray eyes. Confusion, maybe, or curiosity. He stepped closer. One hand lifted, like he might touch my face, but stopped midair. Hung there, suspended between impulse and command. I didn't move. "Tell me something, Emma," he said, voice low. "Are you always this brave? Or just when you're cornered?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "You're the first man who's ever tried to cage me." He let out a breath. Not quite a laugh, but not anger either. Then he turned and walked to the bar. The sound of crystal against wood echoed as he poured whiskey into a glass, ice clinking. He drank, then poured another. He didn't offer me one. "Do you think I enjoy this?" he asked, still facing away. "I think you enjoy control." His shoulders stiffened. "You think I'm cruel?" "I think you're careful. The kind of careful that only comes from being deeply hurt." That made him turn. The look in his eyes was different now. Not cold, not angry. Exposed, only for a second. Then gone. "You read too much into people," he said, sipping his drink. "I read books. People are harder." A strange silence followed. Not empty, not threatening, just still. He walked past me, set his drink down, and reached for the doorknob. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe I hated the silence more than I feared his presence. "Why me?" I asked. He paused. His back was to me. His voice, when it came, was flat. Not distant, guarded. "Because you were desperate and quiet. And I needed a wife who wouldn't ask for anything I couldn't give. Like love. Especially that." Then he opened the door and left. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between city sirens. The sheets were cold. The pillow smelled faintly of cedar and something sharper underneath. His cologne, maybe. Or just the residue of too many closed doors. Around 2 a.m., I wandered into the living room. Alexander was there, shirtless, standing, by the window. His back was a map of scars, faint lines, jagged paths, like he'd lived 100 lives and never talked about one. I didn't mean to make a sound, but he turned, saw me. He didn't cover himself, didn't speak, just looked. I stepped forward, just enough to be near him, not enough to touch. "Who hurt you?" I whispered. "No one who matters." "Are they dead?" His mouth curved. Not a smile, something darker. Emotionally, we stood like that for a while. The lights of the city blinking against the glass. The air between us thick with questions neither of us had the courage to ask. Then he said, "Go back to bed, Emma." My name in his voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. I turned to go, but at the door I looked back. "You don't have to keep proving how untouchable you are, Alexander. I'm not here to wound you." He didn't answer, but he didn't stop me either, and somehow that silence was the loudest thing he'd said all night. When someone stops pretending they don't feel, what are you supposed to do with the pieces they let slip? By the third day, I knew the layout of the penthouse better than my own apartment back in Charleston. I knew which floorboard creaked near the window, which cabinet held the expensive wine no one touched. I knew the security code to the door, even though I had nowhere to go, and I knew the exact hour Alexander came home, between 11 p.m. and the moment the city exhaled. What I didn't know was where he went when he left. He didn't offer details, and I didn't ask. We moved like strangers in a shadow ballet, crossing paths without making contact, breathing the same air, but living in entirely different climates. Until that night. It was 12:43 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the velvet couch with a book pressed to my chest, the fire half dead, a mug of cold chamomile untouched on the side table. The sound of glass shattering made me jolt up, not an accident, an impact, then a thud, a low, dragging sound, and a voice, his, low and sharp and broken. I rushed toward the entry hallway. My bare feet froze on the stone tiles. Alexander leaned against the wall, one arm pressed to his side, blood trailing from a cut on his lip. His shirt was torn, white fabric stained dark across his ribs. He looked like someone had tried to erase him and failed halfway through. "What the hell?" I breathed, moving toward him. "Don't," he said hoarsely, holding up a hand. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine. You're not." I stepped forward again. This time, he didn't stop me. I reached out slowly, carefully, and pressed my hand to his side. His body flinched under my touch. Not in pain, in reflex, like he wasn't used to being touched gently. "Let me clean this," I said. He didn't argue. That scared me more than the blood. The bathroom was marble and glass, the kind of place where nothing messy was ever meant to happen. I grabbed a clean towel, warm water, alcohol. I didn't speak. He sat on the counter, shirt half off, watching me like I was a puzzle someone forgot to finish. I knelt in front of him. The cut on his lip was clean. His ribs were bruised, but nothing broken. You need stitches. No hospital. Then, hold still. I pressed the alcohol-soaked cloth against the gash. He hissed softly but didn't move. For a long moment, the only sound was our breath. Then he asked, "Why are you helping me?" I looked up. His eyes weren't hard now. They were tired. Old. Human. "Because I'm not like you," I said softly. His mouth twitched. "You think I'm a monster?" "I think you're someone who forgot how to bleed without hiding it." That stopped him. He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he hadn't heard in years. Then his voice dropped. "They wanted information." "Who did?" "People who think power is a currency you steal, not earn." I didn't understand the full story, but I didn't need to. Not yet. "You don't have to carry this alone," I said. He laughed, bitter and low. "That's the thing, Emma. I do. No one gets close without taking something. Not in my world. I don't want anything from you. You will." I stood up, suddenly colder than I'd been all night. Maybe I did sign a contract. But you're not the only one with walls, Alexander. You just hide yours in suits and silence. He looked down at the towel in my hand, now pink with blood. Then, he said something so soft I almost missed it. "You should have run." I met his eyes. I don't run. Not from people who bleed. The next morning, I found a cup of coffee waiting on the kitchen island. My favorite blend. No note, no explanation, but it was hot and real and quiet in a way that felt less lonely than usual. Later that day, he asked if I wanted to attend a charity event with him. It was the first time he'd said the word with. I agreed. The event was as sterile and stunning as I expected. All glass gowns and champagne whispers. Women in designer dresses who looked at me like I was a misplaced ornament. Men with silver watches and snake smiles. Alexander wore a black suit, no tie, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked effortless. Untouchable. Until a man approached me with too much wine and too little respect. "Did he buy you?" the man said, slurring slightly. "Or are you a volunteer?" I blinked. Before I could speak, a hand shot out. "Alexander." He grabbed the man by the collar and dragged him close, voice like steel. "Apologize to my wife. Now." The room went still. The man stammered, mumbled something that might have been an apology, and vanished into the crowd. Alexander turned to me, our eyes locked, and for the first time, I saw it. Not power, not cold, fury, fear, protection. For me. He didn't say a word, but his hand brushed mine as we walked away, and in that split-second touch, something cracked open. Not in him, in me. What happens when the person you thought owned you begs to be touched? The fight started before either of us said a word. It began with the way he walked in, wet from rain, his coat clinging to broad shoulders, black hair damp against his forehead. Something wild sat behind his eyes, unraveled, human, and it began with me, not backing down. I was already halfway out the door, coat on, bag in hand. "You don't get to decide where I go," I snapped, voice too steady for how hard my heart pounded. Alexander didn't blink. "You are my wife." "No. I'm your contract, and I'm done pretending that means the same thing." His jaw clenched, breath heavy. "This isn't about pretending. It's about safety. You don't want me safe. You want me obedient." He stepped forward, chest rising and falling fast. "I want you alive. Do you have any idea what it would do to me if something happened to you?" I froze. The silence that followed was the loudest thing he'd ever said, He seemed to realize it, too. He looked away, his voice low and unraveling. I didn't mean that. Yes, I whispered. You did. The rain hit the windows in sheets. Lightning flashed over Manhattan, silver veins across a black sky. He turned back toward me. Slow, deliberate. A man fighting himself and losing. I dropped the bag. He saw it, heard it hit the floor, but said nothing. I took one step forward. He didn't move. Another. Now I stood right in front of him. His shirt was soaked, clinging to muscle. His tie was gone. The collar hung open, exposing the sharp line of his throat, his breathing shallow, like he didn't trust air to be real. Say it, I said. His voice cracked. What? Say what you're afraid of. He didn't. So I kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was collision. Lips crashing, hands grabbing, breath lost. His mouth claimed. Mine like he was dying for it. Like he'd wanted this since the moment I signed my name and sold my freedom. My hands gripped his shoulders, pulling him closer, until there was nothing between us but heat and surrender. He backed me into the wall, one hand sliding up my spine, the other tangling in my hair. Emma, he breathed like a curse. I answered, him with a gasp, dragging my fingers under the edge of his shirt, feeling skin, warm, scarred, alive. Not marble, not cold. Just him. He paused, only for a moment. Tell me to stop, he said, voice shaking. I won't, I whispered. Not tonight. Clothes fell, one by one. No hesitation, no shame. His jacket hit the floor. My dress slid down my legs. His fingers grazed my hip, slow and reverent. When he looked at me, it wasn't hunger. It was awe, like he couldn't believe I was real. He carried me to the bed, laid me down like I was something precious. Not his, not owned, just wanted. His mouth found my neck, my collarbone, my chest. Each kiss a promise he didn't know how to say out loud. When he entered me, it wasn't rushed. It was everything. Tension released. Power surrendered. Fear exhaled. I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him deeper, closer, until we moved together. No longer two people battling for control. Just us. At one point, his forehead touched mine, and he whispered, broken and bare, "You ruin me." After, we didn't speak. We lay tangled in sheets and sweat and silence. His hand stayed on my waist. Mine rested over his heart. I felt it beat. Steady now. Not the rapid rhythm of conquest, but the slow thrum of a man who finally let someone in. He spoke first. Do you think this changes anything? I didn't look at him. I think it changes everything. He turned toward me, eyes unreadable in the dark. I don't do love, Emma. And I don't do cages, I replied. Another silence. Not cold, just uncertain. He brushed hair from my cheek, traced the curve of my lip with his thumb. I don't know how to be good for you. Then stop trying, I said, closing my eyes. Just be real. The next morning I woke up still in his arms, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I didn't feel owned. I felt seen. What do you do when the man who said he'd never kneel drops to his knees in front of you? I woke up before him. Sunlight slipped through the glass walls, painting gold across his bare shoulders. His arm was still around me, heavy and warm, like his body hadn't accepted that sleep was over. That reality might try to steal this moment back. For a long time I didn't move. Just listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing. Not careful. Not guarded. Human. The same man who once told me not to expect love now held me like I was the only real thing in his life. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him. My body ached in places I hadn't known could feel, not from pain, but from opening, from letting go. In the kitchen, I stood barefoot on cold tile, sipping coffee he didn't make. For once, the silence wasn't suffocating. It felt earned. Behind me, footsteps approached. I didn't turn. Then came his voice, low, rough from sleep, like gravel softened by dawn. "You left the bed." "You looked peaceful," I said. "I'm not." I turned. He was leaning against the doorframe, wearing only sweatpants, hair tousled, eyes still dark from whatever storm lived inside him. And then, he did the last thing I expected. He dropped, to one knee. Not fast, not dramatic. Just quiet, deliberate. Alexander Drake, Manhattan's coldest king, on one knee. My heart stopped. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice too soft. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in those steel gray eyes. Real, raw, no mask. "I don't have the right words," he said. "I don't have the history, or the softness, or the love you deserve. But last night," his throat tightened. "Last night you broke something open in me, and I don't know how to close it." I stood frozen, coffee cooling in my hand. He reached for me, not to grab, but to offer. One hand, palm up. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to stay. I just need you to know." Pause. "I've never knelt for anyone in my life. Not once. Not for family. Not for business. Not even for God." He swallowed. "But I'm kneeling now, because I need you to see me. Not the power, not the money. Just me." I lowered the mug, walked to him, took his hand, and said nothing. What could I say? There are moments words only cheapen. And this was one of them. I knelt too. Right there on the floor, across from him. We sat in silence, fingers laced, two broken people trying to feel whole for the first time in years. Finally, I spoke. "You scare me," I whispered. "Because you make me want things I told myself I didn't need." He looked up. "What things?" "Home. Touch. Belonging." A pause. A heartbeat. "You," I said. The hours after that unfolded like something foreign to us both. He made breakfast. Real breakfast. Burnt toast. Oversalted eggs. The bacon was good, though. He didn't apologize for the food. I didn't complain. We sat by the window, legs tangled under the table, sharing a plate like people who knew how. He asked me questions, not business ones, not surface ones, where I grew up, what my first job was, if I still dream when I sleep. I asked him what music he listened to in college. He didn't answer right away. Then said, almost shy, "Johnny Cash, the lonely kind of songs." Of course he did. Later that evening, he surprised me again. He handed me a small box. No bow. No note. Inside was a necklace. Simple. Silver. A single charm. A tiny book. I looked at him, confused. "I asked your assistant," he said. "She said your bookstore cafe was the only thing you ever truly built for yourself." I blinked hard. "I thought you weren't sentimental," I managed. "I'm not," he said, "but I am learning." That night, I didn't sleep on the left side of the bed, waiting for him to reach for me. I curled into him first. I placed my ear to his chest, listened to the sound of a heart learning how to trust again. He kissed my hair, and for once, no part of me questioned it. But just when I let myself believe we were safe, just when I allowed myself to hope, the past found a way back in. It started with a phone call. He stepped out to answer. I wasn't meant to hear it, but I did. Make sure the money is delivered. She can't know what it was for. Silence. Then his voice again, lower, sharper. I said I'll handle Emma. She doesn't need to know she was part of a settlement. The breath left my lungs. A settlement for me? I backed away from the door, hands shaking. The warmth from the morning turned to frost in seconds. He'd knelt. He'd kissed. He'd lied. What hurts more? Being lied to, or knowing you believed every word before the lie came? I didn't confront him that night. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't demand answers. I simply crawled out of our shared bed in the darkness, packed a small bag, and walked away while he slept, his breath steady, his arms still stretched toward the empty space I'd just left. Charleston felt smaller than I remembered. The air was warmer, thicker, or maybe that was just grief sitting in my throat. I moved back into the tiny apartment above my old cafe. Everything was as I left it. The books, the mismatched mugs, the crooked closed sign on the door. Everything. Except me. The girl who once stood behind this counter with her sleeves rolled up, and her dreams hidden in coffee steam had died somewhere between a silk bedsheet and a lie whispered through a closed door. 3 days passed. He didn't call. 5. Still. Nothing. I checked my phone more than I wanted to admit. A message. A voicemail. Anything. But there was nothing. No apology. No explanation. Just the echo of, she doesn't need to know. And, make sure the money is delivered. On the 6th day, a courier showed up. A simple envelope. No return address. Inside, a check. $2.5 million. And a note in neat handwriting. This was never about the money, but you deserved more than silence. I stared at the paper like it might burn through my skin. Then I tore it in half. Then into fourths. Then into ash. I didn't want his money. I wanted the man who had whispered, "You ruin me," like it meant something. And maybe that was my mistake. The next morning, a storm hit Charleston, literal and otherwise. My cafe flooded. A pipe burst under the floor. Books were ruined. The coffee machine died. It was poetic, in a cruel way. I stood knee-deep in water, soaked to the bone, clutching a dripping hardcover of Wuthering Heights, and wondered how everything could fall, apart twice in 1 month. I didn't notice the black SUV until it was too late. Didn't hear the door open, but I felt him, behind me. Unmistakable, uninvited, unwelcome. Emma. I turned slowly. Alexander stood there in a rain-soaked coat, eyes bloodshot, jaw tense. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, like regret had hollowed him out from the inside. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. For once, he let silence do the heavy lifting. Finally, I broke it. "How long were you going to lie to me?" "I didn't lie," he said. "She doesn't need to know." "That's not lying?" His breath caught. "I was trying to protect you." "No," I said coldly. "You were trying to protect your version of me. The obedient, quiet wife who'd never question why her father's hospital bills suddenly disappeared overnight." He flinched. So it was true. "You paid off my debts," I said. "But not out of kindness. You turned my desperation into leverage." His jaw clenched. "At first, yes, but it changed. I changed." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to lose you." You lost me the moment you treated me like a problem to solve instead of a person to love. The words hung between us like smoke, acrid, unforgiving. He stepped closer, shoes splashing in the water. Emma, I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to love me either, I whispered. That was the real wound, the one I couldn't bandage. He looked down, then back at me. I don't know how to love right, he said, voice cracking, but I swear to you, I never lied about what I felt. I swallowed. You lied by omission. You took my choices from me. That's not love, Alexander. That's control. He didn't argue. He just stood there, getting soaked, getting smaller. I could have screamed. I could have told him to go to hell. But I didn't, because for all his power, his wealth, his perfect composure, he looked lost, and I'd been lost too. But sometimes, love isn't about running back into someone's arms. It's about walking away with dignity. So I stepped back. I need space, I said. Time, truth. He nodded once, then did something that stopped my breath. He took off the necklace, the silver charm of a book he once gave me, and placed it on the counter, not with anger, not with guilt, just with finality. I'll wait, he said, and then quietly, even if it takes the rest of my life. Then he turned, walked out into the rain. No driver, no umbrella, just him and the consequences of every choice he'd made. I watched him go, and for the first time since I met him, I believed him. He wouldn't chase me. He'd wait, and maybe I'd come back. But only if he proved he wasn't the man I walked away from. What do you do when the person you walked away from stands in the rain, not to win you back, but to ask if there's still a way in? It had been 19 days since the flood, since I last saw him, since the moment I told Alexander Drake that I needed space, and he'd given it to me. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits in black SUVs, just silence, and I hated how much I noticed it. The cafe was almost fully repaired, floors redone, books restocked. The coffee machine purred like it had never drowned. And still, some part of me felt submerged, was grateful for the quiet. But grief has a sound. It hums beneath every moment, like a song you didn't ask to hear but can't turn off. On the 20th day, I received an invitation. Thick envelope. Black ink. No return name. You are cordially invited to the annual Drake Foundation Charity Gala. Location: Manhattan Museum of Modern Art. Date: Saturday. Time: 8:00 p.m. Dress code: red. I almost threw it away, but I didn't. Something about it felt unfinished. So I went. The night of the gala, the museum glittered like a jewel in a city that never slept. Lights hung from trees. Strings played softly. In corners, people sparkled in diamonds and deceit. I wore red, not because he asked, but because I chose to. I wanted to walk into that room on my terms. He saw me before I saw him. I felt it, the sudden shift in atmosphere, the way conversations faltered like someone had just stopped breathing. And then I turned. Alexander stood at the far end of the gallery, dressed in black, alone. Eyes locked on me like I was the only real thing in a room full of shadows. He didn't move, so I did. With each step, I remembered every version of us: contractual strangers, cautious allies, desperate lovers, fractured souls. When I reached him, I stopped 2 feet away. Neither of us spoke. Then, from a hidden corner, a man stepped forward. One of Alexander's investors, smirking, slurring. "So this is the charity case, huh?" he said, nodding at me. Alexander didn't hesitate. He stepped in front of me, voice low but lethal. Say one more word, and I'll ruin your entire legacy in under 3 minutes." The man paled, disappeared. Alexander turned back to me. And in front of everyone, in the middle of Manhattan high society, he did the unthinkable. He stepped out into the courtyard and knelt. In the rain, no theatrics. No grand speech. Just a man in a suit, soaked to the bone, on his knees beneath the sky, holding nothing but truth. I followed. Slowly. Raindrops slid down my arms, soaking through the fabric. He didn't speak right away, didn't look up. He just knelt, waiting. Finally, I whispered, "Why now?" His voice cracked. "Because I finally understand that love isn't power. It's surrender." He looked up at me, eyes no longer guarded, no longer calculating. Just his. "I didn't come out here to take you back," he said. "I came to give you the chance to leave for good. But I needed you to know the truth before you did." "I'm listening," I said. "I fell in love with you the moment you looked me in the eye and told me not to mistake your silence for obedience. I fell deeper when you didn't run from my darkness, and I fell apart when I realized I had no idea how to keep you without hurting you." The rain didn't stop. Neither did my heart. "You were never a transaction," he said. "You were the first thing I ever wanted that I didn't know how to earn." He stood, slowly, face inches from mine. "I don't want to own you, Emma. I want to be worthy of you." My chest ached. Not from pain, but from everything I'd held back. I looked at him, soaking wet, jaw clenched, trying not to touch me unless I gave permission. And for the first time, I saw the boy beneath the billionaire, the fighter beneath, the fortress, the man beneath the monster. "I'm still angry," I said. "I deserve that. I don't trust easily. I'll wait." I stepped closer. Rain dripped from my lashes. His eyes tracked every movement, and then I did what neither of us expected. I kissed him, not out of pity, not because I'd forgiven him, but because something in me finally let go. He melted, right there. His hands didn't grip. They held. His mouth was reverent. His breath was a confession. We kissed like two people who knew the past would never stop hurting, but that maybe, just maybe, the future could heal. Later that night, he walked me to the car but didn't ask me to stay. He opened the door, waited. Before I stepped in, I turned. "You said you'd wait forever," I said. I meant it. I reached up, brushed my thumb across his cheek, then meet me halfway. His brows furrowed. "Come home," I whispered. "But this time build it with me. Not for me." His throat moved, emotion caught behind restraint. And then he nodded. "Sometimes forever doesn't need a vow. Just two people who finally choose the same direction." 6 weeks later, our mornings looked nothing like they used to. No icy silence, no closed doors, no power games over breakfast. Just two people, learning how to live in the same space, at the same pace, without hiding. The first time Alexander laughed, really laughed, in the kitchen, he burnt toast again. I teased him. He didn't get defensive. He kissed my shoulder and said, "I'm not perfect, just persistent." That was his new line, and he proved it every day, not through grand gestures, but by showing up. He moved back to Charleston, not into the penthouse above me, or a penthouse at all. He bought the old brick building next to Chapter and Steam and turned the second floor into a home. Modest, sunlit, quiet. He let me choose the paint colors. He let me argue over furniture. He even let me put up my Wuthering Heights print in the hallway. Right, where guests could see it. Progress. We didn't talk much about the past at first. It hung between us like an old scar. Visible, but not bleeding anymore. And one day, I asked him why he never chased me after I left. He looked at me, eyes calm. "Because you asked for space," he said, and I finally realized, love isn't about filling silence, it's about respecting it. I kissed him for that. Hard, one night, in the quiet of our new kitchen, he took out the silver book charm, the one I had once returned in anger. It was polished now, tied to a new chain. He placed it in my palm. "You gave it back because you didn't believe it meant anything," he said. But it did. It still does. I looked at him, tears threatening. "And now?" He stepped closer. "It means this time, we write the story together. We didn't get remarried, not formally. But on the third Sunday after he moved in, we hosted a small dinner. Just us, my father, a few close friends, and a dog we impulsively adopted from the shelter. His name's Booker fitting. That night, under string lights and jazz, Alexander stood up. No tuxedo, no stage. Just jeans and a heart that no longer needed armor. He held my hand, eyes soft, voice low. "I made a lot of mistakes," he said. "But this woman, she changed everything I thought I knew about love." He turned to me. "I didn't. Bring a ring. I don't even know if you'd want one." I laughed through tears, but I brought something else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny leather-bound book. Inside were pages. Blank, except the first one. It read, Chapter 1. Emma said yes. We didn't make promises we couldn't keep. No forever carved into marble. But we built something stronger. Everyday love, the kind that folds laundry. Fights fair, shows up. Holds hands even when it's easier to walk away. The kind that stays. Some nights we still get quiet. Old ghosts knock. Regret lingers. But he never shuts down anymore. He reaches for me, and I let him. One morning, curled into him under the softest blanket in our bedroom, I whispered, "Do you still think I ruined you?" He kissed my forehead. "No," he murmured. "You rebuilt me, from the inside out." I smiled against his chest. I guess that makes us even then, because I no longer belonged to him, and he no longer owned me. We had burned the contract, shattered the cage. Now all that was left was choice, and every day, without hesitation, we chose each other. Sometimes forever doesn't need a vow, just two people who finally choose the same direction. Some people think love is a crescendo, fireworks, vows under chandeliers, a grand finale with violins swelling in the background. But it's not. Love, when it's real, is quieter than that. It sounds like two people breathing in sync in the early morning light. It feels like burnt toast eaten without complaint. It looks like one hand reaching for another in the middle of a silent room, not to hold on for control, but just to say, "I'm still here." Emma didn't love Alexander because he changed for her. She loved him because he finally stopped performing. He stopped hiding. And when he stripped away the armor, what was left wasn't a perfect man, but a man who chose to stay. And she did the same. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because she realized strength isn't walking away to prove a point. It's coming back when both people are finally ready to build something real. That kind of love doesn't come fast. It doesn't come clean. It comes with silence, distance, cracks. And, if you're lucky, it comes with the courage to face yourself through someone else's eyes. Alexander spent most of his life mistaking control for safety. Power was his language. Silence, his weapon. And Emma. She didn't break through with declarations or ultimatums. She waited. She walked away when she needed to. And when she came back, it wasn't with forgiveness as a gift. It was with standards. She let him earn his way in. Not with flowers, not with diamonds, with honesty, with presence, with proof that change wasn't a performance, it was a process. That's the part they don't tell you in fairy tales. That happily ever after isn't the end. It's the start of learning each other all over again. With new scars, new fears, new vows, spoken not at the altar, but across a dinner table, or a hallway, or in the middle of a rainstorm when pride finally gives out. Maybe you've loved someone, like Alexander. Maybe you've been Alexander. Maybe you're still in the part where someone walked away, and you're waiting to become someone they'd return to. And maybe that return doesn't come with music or second chances. But if it ever does, let it meet you when you're not begging to be loved. Let it find you when you finally believe you deserve to be. Because you do. That's the truth under all of this. Not that broken people are hard to love, but that broken people, when they choose to rise instead of retreat, when they kneel not to beg, but to own what they've done, can build the most lasting kind of love there is, one that isn't built on promises, but on choices, every single day. And if Emma and Alexander could find their way back through storms, silence, and shattered trust, maybe we all can. If this story touched something deep in you, don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it, and hit subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after the last word.